As an undergraduate, he had done more than enough vivisection, dissection, and deliberate infection of laboratory animals to drive him to specialize in botany as soon as possible. Why did every generation of biology student have to amputate the legs of living frogs and spectate on the beating hearts of crucified mammals as if they were trying to join a tough gang whose rite of passage was a random murder? At the peak of his rebellion against this tradition, he had come across a remark by Wittgenstein, not especially eloquent in itself, but striking at the time because it seemed to vindicate his unease about the way he was being taught. Physiological life is, of course, not life, nor is psychological life. Life is the world. He might not have made the grade as a lethal biologist, but he remained a naturalist, trying to appreciate the last of those 3 short sentences as deeply as he could. Being a naturalist wasn't a bad tradition. After all, before New Darwinism there had been Darwinism, and before Darwinism, Darwin, a man writing about earthworms and making detailed observations of living creatures and joining pigeon fencing clubs and gardening and corresponding with other naturalists without treating their testimony as merely anecdotal. Francis came to a halt. After 8 years at Haworth, he had grown to know the mushrooms scattered around the estate, identifying the woods where he might expect to forage giant puffballs or porcini for lunch, as well as the meadows and pastures where the flimsy and modest-looking liberty caps hid their psilocybin charge, like jewels sewn into the lining of a refugee's tattered overcoat. Right now he had almost stepped on a chanterelle. It was evidence of a vigorous mycorrhizal network under his feet, the product of a symbiotic association between fungi foraging for nutrients in the soil and the roots of these young trees. In some ecosystems, the nutrients were transferred from favored plants to struggling ones, but in any case the whole network was supposed to take much longer to establish. It was exciting to see new knowledge emerging from the wilding experiments that was taking place on the land around his cottage. His landlords had noticed that the old oaks at Haworth were sickening and beginning to die back. They had lost their bloom, and some skeletal branches were sticking out of the canopy like bare antlers. They called in an expert who told them that the oaks were dying, from the constant ploughing that churned up their roots, and from the pesticides and artificial fertilizer being showered on the soil. Trees that had withstood the demands of shipbuilding, the Industrial Revolution, and the timber quotas of the Second World War were being killed by improvements in farming. George and Emma made the radical decision to abandon intensive agriculture and turn over their estate to wilding. The monotony of wheat was replaced by red deer and fallow deer, Tamworth pigs, English longhorn cattle, and a herd of Exmoor ponies acting as proxies for animals that would have roamed Britain in the past, aurochs, tarpon and wild boar, in a landscape that was gradually turning into a kind of English savanna of open grassland dotted with trees and shrubs. Francis, who had arrived at Haworth 2 years after the wilding began, was given the job of monitoring the resurgence of species and taking visitors on tours of the estate. He found himself living in a world of growing richness, a hotspot for nightingales and turtle doves, a place that might help save a species from extinction and where scientific knowledge was being advanced.